What up, folks? We're back. I can't believe I could do that because I'm kind of sick right now. And there it comes. I'm surprised I did that without coughing, but I did. So excited to be back here, man. Clement, the man, the myth, the legend is here. We connected over a year ago during the bear market. And now you couldn't talk about not a bear market and one of the most hyped things in the Web3 NFT world, man. Welcome back to the show. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great, man. Thanks for having me on the show, man. It's been a year. So many things has happened. The bubble hype is real, and so many things to talk about. Happy to be on here.
Thanks, man. I'm so glad for you stopping by and taking the time. And of course, there's another face here that you're used to, but he's back. Maddie, welcome back, brother. It's been too long. Just give us a quick hitter of what you've been up to, and then we'll get to the show.
Yeah, man. Well, I've been missing this, that's for sure. But it's been a wild journey. So we took a little break. You had some life events, and I took some time to basically do like a little hiatus and almost I don't know what you would call it, but I basically went international and toured Italy for 3 months and just lived there. Got to go around the main continent. Saw a lot of the just amazing sights to see, some of the sites that you don't really get to see as a tourist, which was fantastic. Spent 2 months just living in Rome, and it was amazing. I got kind of an insider perspective, and then got back here to the States and have started a new job, still doing that and real estate and doing the podcast here on MLC. So juggling a lot of things at once. I think all of us can relate to that. Got a lot of things in a lot of irons in the fire, and just pumped up, man. Life's good. Got some major life milestones that have been moving forward, but we can chat about that another time. But everything's amazing, and I'm excited. And it's been a long time, man. It's been too long, so I'm happy to be here.
Dude, so glad to have you back, especially with Clement in the house, because we had an amazing conversation with him and David about a year ago. So let's start off with this. Not your typical formats, like I said, since we already did our long format, but we do want to do episode 1 and 2. Reminder, episode 1 is kind of like a little bit of the childhood. Episode 2 is kind of the professional career. And then we'll go straight into Web3 by kind of catching up from where we left off last time that you were on the show. So hit us with episode 1 and 2. Excited for you to kind of share that for some people that don't have that background about you.
Yeah. So the first question being like what's the background of me, right? So yeah. I think itself, I started off as I started off as a computer scientist back then in like 15 years ago, I'll say somewhere there. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like that was my education, and I was like in advertising agency as a front-end developer doing stuff for Adidas, Nike, DKNY, Heineken back then, doing just cool websites back then. Yeah. And what I really loved to do was back then, I want to create better looking websites. Yeah. So I actually taught myself a little bit on a tutorial base. Every day I just watch a YouTube tutorial and just want to learn animation to create better websites back then. And it's just day after day and of practices, and along the way, I think I fell in love with animation and design in general. So I got my goal in terms of creating a really, really cool website. I think I did this website called for Adidas back then. It's called Adidas Mega. It's for this shoe, and yeah. I think it won quite a little bit of awards back then. And as usual, I got promoted and everything, right? But I think along the way, I wanted to do a lot more, right? I wanted the animation side of things has so much potential. And so I went deep dive into the whole entire 3D world, After Effects world, and everything. So I think along the way, before I left the employment world, I was a creative group head when I was 26 in the advertising world. And that was having 15 creatives under me somewhere there. And yeah. I told myself, I just want to do my own stuff, right? I want to explore, I want to tell my own stories. I want to do my, I just want to explore my art as a whole. So me and David started off our very first business 11 years ago, where we started our very first company called Offset, which is a motion design agency. Started with the two of us, and slowly as time grew, we became a 30-man team. So we started servicing small clients back there at the start. I remember this office was really small. We had I think it's just like a 400 square feet space with just two of us, and then like Gregory, which is like 9 foot table, is one of the partners on Imaginary Ones right now, and he's running Offset. He was our very first employee, and we grew the whole entire business all together. And along the way, like once we hit to a milestones of like creating high-end content for like Apple, Nike, Samsung, Spotify, F1, so many different big brands like for big commercials back then. And we actually invested our profits into our second business, which is Ophio, an online video platform. That is for us, because like the thing about advertising agency itself is we start to realize that it's a business that is it's not really a very scalable business, and a very manpower business, right? People leave, people stay, and we just keep going on this cycle and telling people stories. So we wanted to build our own product, and that's where we actually ventured into our second business, Ophio, an online video platform where we started building from scratch. This online platform where you can select templates and you can create content, short content very easily. The platform slowly grew to like servicing around 300,000 businesses all around the world. Fun fact: Binance was one of our users back then in 2016. It's a one whole cycle right now. And yeah, we went.
Awesome.
And that's where we started investing in crypto a little bit in 2016. Buying the early phases of Ethereum, BNB and stuff. Setting up mining rigs to farm ETH.
Right.
That was a good old times with GPUs and everything. So and I think when that business also grew to a certain point, me and David just like we wanted to do a lot more. I feel like we still haven't really built something that tells our own story. We have our own product, we have our advertising agency, but we wanted to be our own IP and the characters and everything. So that's how we sort of like dive into this whole entire Web3 world, where I feel like because we were investing in like DeFi's and everything, and to me the sky's the limit in the Web3 world. There's so many things going on. So when we dive into the whole NFT world itself, like it was something very fresh, and I felt like it was the right place at the right time for us, and we created a series of characters, and the rest was history. I mean, like what you're seeing right now. So it is a very long journey. Like
it's a huge journey, and we actually made a short that you interacted with that recounts like that first overnight. You got 24,000. Well, you went to bed and you're like, I got 0 views. No one gives a shit. And then you woke up the next morning with David telling you like, bro, you better lock your stuff down. You're going to get hacked. Just that magical time, right? But you said a couple things that are interesting. And I think I want to ask before we kind of get to the next part, which you gained a lot of amazing skill sets and leadership qualities and wins and losses just getting to Web3, right? Like you said, full circle, you were working for Binance. There are so few little people that we talk to still in Web3 to this day that actually have built multiple companies like yourself and then build a Web3 project related to the skill set that you've built companies in, right? Which is mind-blowing, right? So I talked to a lot of people that are like, oh, I'm going to build a game. Have you built a game? No, I haven't built a game, but it's my opportunity to do this in Web3, right? Talk to us about maybe some of the best skill sets you think you learned to kind of prep yourself for this Web3 brand IP evolution that you were prepped for. But what are those skill sets you learned through those couple businesses before you got to the Web3 journey?
Yeah, you actually brought up a good point, because like for us, we've been entrepreneurs for I think like more than a decade. It's crazy. So like and I feel like there's no one out there that can say like I'm going to start a business the very first time and it's going to succeed. This is just like, it's still idealistic, right? It's never going to be like that. It's going to be a lot of trial and error and failing, and then try again and again and again. So like for us, we like the very first business, we learned how to scale a business to a certain size, and of course learning how to pitch to big clients, and understanding their needs to create that sort of content for them. And that is itself, like it's also a people management skill, right? So you want to scale to a certain size, you need people management skills. I think at the baseline, you need to know how to run a business and scale to a certain size. And then for the second business, for Ophio, was we actually, true story, we failed the very first time, where we were building the very first product. So when it succeeded only when we had like the second iteration of it. So the first iteration was a case of us like we were like very fresh in the space for a tech sort of like product space. So we thought that it will be very easy for us to, we had the profits that we had. We outsourced quite a bit, like 70% of the work to a company to build that product. And when there was, I think we wasted money and time, realizing that once the product was back to us, it was not the product we actually envisioned it to be, right? So we had to scrap the whole entire idea. We lost money, we lost time. That's the truth. And we actually had to rebuild the team internally. We got our CTO Jerome, which is right now our partner. Imagine wants to actually start building that product that we envisioned it to be, and it slowly became like, we had the team, and then the product started growing as a whole. So, and that became a successful product. So that was one of the landmines that we stepped on when we initially started Ophio. So I think inevitably, like you say, if you say like, we're going to start a Web3 project, and I want to build a game, and it's going to work the first time, I think it's too idealistic. It's never going to be the case. Yeah.
Right. 100%. And it also brings up the point where people actually get negatively impacted by maybe starting Web3 things multiple times because they're going to fail. Most likely they're going to fail. What are your thought processes on those founders that might have had some failures and then successes, and kind of how Web3 treats them? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I think starting a business, actually, to be in true reality, like startups fail more than 90% of the time, or 95% of the time, right? Only 5% or 1% make it. So, but the difference when it comes to Web3, people are a little bit more vocal. And of course, typically they raise money by selling a product. Could it be an NFT mint? Could it be some tokens or anything? And then people have these expectations that it's going to move. But we're putting on a probability that 95% of the time it doesn't move. So, and then people get angry, and then, either the founders stick by it to build that product again and again and try to iterate it to success, or they will just try to jump on the next idea and the next idea and the next idea. And I feel if as founders, like, because the thing about when we're selling something in the Web3 world, the price is a little bit higher, like a mean price get higher compared to Web2 world. So that's how people actually look at a fundraising model. But the problem is, if you look at a fundraising model in the Web2 world, you build a product, it's profitable, you go for more fundraising, Series A, Series B, Series C. But when it comes to a Web3 world, it's actually inverted. You sell a dream, and then people start investing in you. So naturally, people will get angry about it. It's just like inevitable. But my thoughts about it is, as founders, if you're not ready to start a project and to go for it for a long term, and if you just want to jump to the next one and the next one, I would suggest you not do it, because it hurts your reputation. And ultimately, I don't know, man. It is, if you can manage to do to the second or third one and you eventually succeed, I think kudos on that. But I don't see that much of a use cases or case study that actually many people actually manage to do it.
Right.
So I'll say, like, as founders, we have to be very responsible in terms of the things that we launch and the things that we promise people that we're going to do. So that's, I feel like, in a nutshell, that's the
fantastic advice. Yeah, fantastic advice and feedback. Maddie, anything before we kind of jump into the next part?
No, I love that. I think one of the big insights that a lot of people don't realize in Web3 is, and then you nailed it, Clement, is that in the traditional investment and business space with entrepreneurs, investors that invest in businesses are well aware of the failure rate of businesses. And so they are not surprised or upset or emotional about it. But in the Web3 space, the average investor is just a person who's not a normal investor, or, they don't understand how that kind of stuff works. So they expect 100% success, as if that's a realistic goal. And so I think that's a really fantastic insight. Let me ask you this question. How do you feel, because you mentioned something about your first big kind of like landmine, which was you had that iteration, the first iteration that you had to scrap, lose money on, and redo it. A lot of people who are starting Web3 businesses don't have the background and knowledge of failures lead to success. what advice would you give to help somebody let go of a first iteration? Some people hold on to it so much. It's like their baby, right? And they want it to work, but they're not willing to scrap it and move on to something to make it successful. What are your thoughts on that?
Yep. So I mean, it's definitely like when we actually had to let go of our first iteration and do the second one. It's definitely sad, and of course, like because it's your baby, right? You really But if you look at it as a very grand scheme of things, like a bird's eye view, we know that the next step that we're trying to do is actually making this product better versus because once you go on because when you're building a product, you put in all your heart and soul into it, right? And sometimes you get a little bit blinded because you are in that vicious cycle. So it's very important to step out for once in a while, and because if the results doesn't show, step out of the vicious cycle to look at things in a very different perspective. Like, how can I do something that can potentially revive this, or am I not seeing the flip side of things, right? To rebuild something. Sometimes it all takes is a simple tweak to make something succeed, right? But if you're constantly if you're constantly focusing on solving a singular problem that sometimes may not matter too much, but if you, for example, if you change the business goal, maybe you change it, or maybe you change your target audience itself. Maybe this whole entire thing will work. So, but for Web3 wise, you are under the scrutiny of the public's eye. Everybody is just looking at what you're releasing on a daily basis. So, I think an advice would be just like be extremely honest to with your community. Like, I mean, if they invested in the project, I think typically they want it to succeed too, no matter what. So let's all be honest about it and not try to hide anything. Like, oh, okay, I think the worst thing is like, oh, we are always building, right? and nothing's coming out. But then again, I think the founders are actually building, but the products is just not something that they are comfortable in launching. And that's where the community is constantly asking, what are you building? What's happening and everything. But so I think that I think like 6 months ago, there was a narrative like, founders should build in public, which I think kind of makes sense. But of course, not all like every day you just report to everybody, oh, I'm building A, B, C, but more just like the grand scheme of things, the grand goal itself. And people can be aligned to the North Star, and let's all build towards that together. Because if you leverage on your community, actually, honestly, you can grow so much faster than just doing with yourself. And that's the beauty about Web3 versus a Web2, right? Web2 is very, I'll say, utility-based, kind of like, okay, you give me a product, it works, I want to use it. But for Web3 itself is like, there is some sort of emotional aspect to a product. And then it can go both ways. Either they hate you or they love you and they just become really, really hardcore fans of your product. And that itself is something even much more magical.
Yeah. And you said something very poignant in our last conversation, which was one of your biggest pain points in the beginning of Imaginary Ones, and I'd be interested if this still holds true, is Web3 is really brand 3, and you have this intimate connection with your community like never before. And you had to figure out how to listen to the right people in your community, not the loudest people. Does that still resonate?
Yeah. So if you look at an NFT community, it's similar to a DAO, right? Everybody has their own interests. Like, could it be for the best of the project or for themselves? Like, it's a little bit difficult to tell sometimes.
Right.
But I think listening to the right people and people that I feel like it's at the core of the community itself, how you actually set expectations. In my opinion, if you're always telling them that, oh, we're gonna moon, we're gonna 10x, we're gonna 20x, everybody will have that sort of expectations, and that ideas that sort of like resonate around that mooning kind of concept is never gonna be sustainable. But I think for us Imaginary Ones, we always under promise, and I think that is the core of everything, because we know building takes time, and we know good products will take a while to be distributed well. So we're all very inclined with just like, okay, let's just wait for things to happen, because everything that we shipped out is always we did it at the best quality in the best of our knowledge, right? So I think listening to the community is one thing, but I think helping your community understand what's the North Star.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on. Let's catch up now. So last time you were here, we left off insane bear market. you're still building because you have this vision of IP, building joy through one bubble at a time, which is awesome. That's the name of your token, right? Imaginary Rides hadn't even come out yet. So let's go from that time till now with a crazy, I mean, dude, you almost have 1 million followers on Twitter now, the Imaginary one. I think you had a couple 100,000 followers back then. I mean, it's been exponential growth. Obviously, recently because of the token, but you have grown substantially over time. So take us through that journey. I just want to hear that journey because I don't think many people know that journey.
Yep. So I think the last time when we talked, we were at that imaginary rights phase, right? We're gonna launch the game, and we that was the very first MVP product game that we launched, and we were just like trying to test the market to see how well it would be received, because in a product sense, like we do an MVP before we massively scale something. So imaginary rights became pretty viral. I think we had like 6 million plays in 3 weeks with all these different communities, like Clonex, Memeland, and everybody was participating in it. And through that, gave us some sort of confidence to build something even more deeper into the whole entire mobile game realm, because we saw the data. We are not building based on our feelings. Like, okay, we're gonna build okay, let's build a mobile game, etc. It's more like we are building because we have data to prove that okay, this works. And we are more confident to invest more money to build on the next product. So along the way, we had, of course, a few Hugo Boss collaboration. We launched our belt bag, and in November we launched our mobile game, which is called Bubble Rangers. And the crazy thing, it was like it was pretty hyped, and it's not as hyped as it is right now. But when we launched it on the very first week, a lot of Web3 people supported us, and we became the top 25 game in the App Store for casual games. I think that's pretty awesome. Of course, the DAUs back then was because it was still in the bear market. So I think we were sitting at like 10K-ish DAU a day. So I think that's still okay. But right now, because of the Bubbles token, it's rising like crazy. I think we're at 150K, 160K DAUs.
That's crazy.
That's crazy, man. And of course, like I think during the June period last year, we start planning on the tokenomics side of things. Like, that was way before these meme coins exploded. That was way before everything exploded. There was
So give us the actual date when you started that conversation, because then people need to hear this, that like this isn't, and this is why we're so have such conviction with you, is we know what you're about, and this is what people need to hear, right? So what time period was that when you started having those conversations?
I think it was right after Bubble Rider, and I think it was around May or June last year where we started thinking.
Yeah, so like May, June 2023 starts conversations, and now we're getting close to May, June 2024, right? Which is how things usually work in normal life, and even in Web3 if you're doing it correct. Good. Thank you for giving us that context. So keep on going.
Yeah, sorry. So if you look at an IPO company, for example, it takes a year or 1.5 years before they reach to public, right? So it's similar to what we've been planning for. We're not going to be a meme token. We're not going to be a pump and dump token. Everything that we do, we try to make it as serious and the best knowledge as possible, right? So during the main period of, like, we were thinking, like, for NFTs, they are great, but we saw the market share in terms of NFTs to crypto tokens is a huge disparity. So 95 or 90% of the crypto space are crypto tokens, and maybe 10% or 5% are NFT. So for us to reach the mass adoption phase, how can we can't just without NFTs. I mean, that's great. It's one to build a community, but how can we constantly reward the communities with a bigger share of the space? So a token is inevitable, because to me, NFTs are very illiquid. Tokens are liquid. Things move much faster, and once it becomes liquid, we can reward our holders and potentially scale this whole entire bubble world out of, like, the whole entire crypto world or beyond the Web3 world. So we started fundraising for the token. I think once we had sort of like a strong plan, maybe around August, talking with various VCs and everything, and so there was that very early phase of touchdown, and we started getting a little bit more serious in terms of like getting investment in during like November, December. We closed pretty fast. I think like during November to January, we managed to close all the rounds. So I think that itself, like people started seeing, like when we talked to investors back then, like they were actually pretty shocked by the amount of products that Imaginary Ones has. They were, oh my god, where were you guys? You guys are really legit, because we got Hugo Boss, we got like, now, of course, at the time we were also actively closing a lot of partnerships from the Web2 side, like what you see at Samsung right now. It's been like more than 6 months where I started talking to them, and all this was actually in the pitch deck and everything. So people were investors were very confident, and we made the decision not to take any more money from our holders. That's number one for sure, because why we actually do it, because like if I can, I would want to raise money for the VCs and then try to reward our holders without extracting more liquidity from the space. I think it's a very different approach from a lot of different projects. So there's actually, so many decisions that has to be made, but it has to be made very carefully, and not just like, okay, if this is the hype today, I see a meme coin, I'm going to launch a meme coin. This just, to me, is just not sustainable. Yeah.
It isn't. It isn't. And you bring up a good point. What you said there at the tail end is you already got liquidity from your holders, right? And you understand the power of not trying to suck more out of them, but now reward them for helping you create something that you wanted to create from the first place, which is the complete opposite of what most people are doing in Web3. So it's really, really nice to hear that. And you have mentioned it with, not out blatantly coming and saying that, like, obviously, if you own an Imaginary One and have staked it, that is going to obviously mean something to you guys, right? Which makes total sense. And I think what's crazy, though, too, and we'll talk about this on the public coin side of things, though. I think people still think, though, oh, if I play the game and spam bubble on Twitter, I'm going to be just as handsomely rewarded. And it's like, guys, that's not, yes, at some point the exposure is helping, but there's diminishing returns when you have 1 million followers and everybody knows who you are, right? That's interesting. So I think the natural question, you kind of got us to where we are now. Looking back on that time frame, 2 wins, 2 losses, kind of give us some insight and reflection on that time.
Yeah. So for during the bear market, like, I think it was really, I think the losses was like, when we are trying to talk to various investors and everything, it was a little bit tougher, because like, people are afraid to deploy capital just in general, right? And like for us itself, like, we've managed to build a very strong ecosystem, but with these investors itself, like when, like we're trying to, I feel like, there was a point in time where I had like 12 meetings a day. I think I spent too much time trying to convince everybody, right? But and I think the key for us is to, I think along the way we realized that we don't need to try to please everybody, but it's just more of finding the right key investors that can help us scale, like people like Animoca, Polygon, etc., because we all have the right mindset to build something much bigger for the space. So that's something that I've learned, because I think I waste a lot of time. I think I repeated my deck more than a few hundred times on a daily, like, on a daily basis, 12 times. And that to me, I felt like, I could spend the time a little bit better, but, it's a learning process. That's for sure. And
that's huge. I mean, that alone, you just save somebody some time if they hear this. So thank you for that. Maybe one other like misstep or loss or learning from there. And if you can't, it's no big deal.
Yeah, I think the thing is just back to the question that we had just now, like, listening to all the community members. I think one of my flaws would be I like to please everybody. I think I try to please everybody, and that's where I listen to too many opinions, because like and sometimes it get a little bit cloudy, and I started to realize that it's best to understand why I started the Imaginary Ones, and understand, like, focus on what is the North Star, and try to make our community understand what is the North Star, versus trying to fix most of the time a short-term problem that it doesn't really solve anything. But when like, okay, maybe this is somewhere, because in Web3 every day something is always on fire, right? So you're trying to solve one problem after another, but at the end of the day, you're solving nothing because there's nothing being built. So understanding the North Star, and just like, it's not like we are ignoring the problems, but I think in the grand scheme of things, if there is a North Star, the fires we put out ourselves eventually, and because everybody understands what's the grand goal. But if you're trying to solve a single problem on a daily basis, everybody's still confused at the end of the day, like, oh, what's gonna happen next? I'm gonna start another fire, right? So
I love it. You nailed it. Something happened to me today because there was no North Star, right? And there were not clear terms as to what our North Star was, and that is so huge. Okay, you got to do yourself props because you did a lot of amazing things during that time too. Looking back, what are 2 things that like you're super proud of?
I think it's having this huge growth. Starting Imaginary Ones itself is definitely something I've always been proud of, right? It's something that it's like a legacy brand to me, and I always wanted to make it last a lifetime. So what is really beautiful to me is like, we started off wanting to spread, trying to change the space and trying to bring mass adoption to the space through Imaginary Ones. I think after 2 years at this current point, we've never changed our beliefs, and we've always stick to it, because that's something that because there's so many times where when as a project matures, sometimes people get deviated from their initial goals. For us, I think it's very clear that we want to bring joy to the space, and we want to bring joy through our characters. Could be Bubble Rangers, could be Imaginary Ones, could be the Rights, etc. And to bring all the biggest Web2 brands into our world and build something much bigger. So I think even till today, I mean, we have close to 1 million followers and everything, but what really resonates very well to me is like, we never change our beliefs since day one. And that's something that we're very proud of here.
I know it, but you've actually shown it through being able to build through the bear market, and you've shown a lot of these quote unquote hyped projects that at the end of the day, when this all does fold out years from now, you absolutely, if you keep on doing what you're talking about, we're talking about the real blue chips of the space. Imaginary Ones could be it, and is on the right trajectory to be that. And I think going from 2 years ago, from when you hit the submit button on the post and Twitter with no clue what the hell was going to happen till now, pretty amazing accomplishments. Pretty amazing accomplishments. Maddie, any thoughts before we move on to the token kind of the fervor that we're experiencing now?
Yeah. Just to go back, when you were talking about people pleasing and how easy it is to get distracted by all the fires, I think one of the things that Mikey and I talked about when we first started this podcast and evolved it into Web3 was, of course, this was not the bear market. This was when everything was going crazy with NFTs, and everybody had an opinion. There were so many people that had something to say, and what was really helpful to cut through all of that was to focus on the movers, the shakers, the founders, the people that were making things happen. And that's why our whole goal was like, hey, if we talk to interview founders, we're going to get a different dialogue than we're getting if we're just in these Discord chats. And it's just been amazing to watch that evolve and see the people who have actually followed that advice. And so, to your point, when you can just be careful and kind of like focus on who you're listening to, and then when you are the leader, when you have your North Star, as you're saying, it's incredibly, incredibly powerful. And I see it's been a benefit to Mike and I as well, just following the right people, listening to the right people's advice. So yeah, man, I think you're crushing it for sure. It was awesome.
Thanks, man.
No, I appreciate it. It resonates with, just to go off Maddie real quick, it's our mission too, right? We're trying to inform people, bring joy, kindness to the Web3 space by informing Web3 crypto people that are so inundated with bullshit all day long. Like, we're bringing you, who is a human that bleeds red blood like all of us, has the same emotions, but are able to learn from you, opposed to just looking at some bullshit hype tweet from some influencer who's trying to make a buck off them, right?
Yeah.
They can interpret this conversation, and then they can make their own judgment on what they want to do with their money. I can say here, I'm a firm believer in Clement because we have talked to him a year ago, and this dude is still going. But like, those missions and those North Stars are the ones that I think are the most important. And it's so cool to see somebody that has that's actually building, and it's not a bunch of bullshit like we usually see. So thank you for that, man. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to the last part, which I think is, and I want to start with this because I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about this. Now, again, you're in the public eye, say what you want, say what you don't want, but what is it really like creating a token? I gotta imagine it's a pain in the ass. There is so much red tape, and there's so much that goes into it that, like, I'm sure you want to scream at the top of your lungs, but whatever you think you can share with us, I think people need to understand this journey.
Yeah, I would love to scream at the top of my lungs, man. But, it is I think it's a very tough journey. I mean, there's two ways to look at it, right? If you want to do a token that doesn't have longevity or utility beyond that, I think we can just launch a contract. It works. But if you want to do it right, it's always a little bit tougher. Similar to everything in life, right? If you want to do things fast, easy. But if you want to do things right, it's 100% much more tougher. So there is so many aspects of like a token launch, tokenomics, investment, the utility cycle of things, the white paper or the light paper, and now what we do here for Imagine was a little bit different, because if you look at us, we started off as an NFT project, and now we're launching a token, right? So that itself is a little bit different of a cycle versus like maybe an infra starting a project, like Optimism, for example. They just kind of launched. So there is no very clear playbook in terms of, okay, if you do A, B, C, this is what you should get. But for us itself is something very unique. And I think it's unique in a great way because we had to learn and try to balance the economy a lot before we launched the token. Because if you look at like, the ecosystem funds, the liquidity, there's like our holders, there's like the private sales, there's so many things that's happening, right? How can we make sure that everybody is happy, right? And satisfied with the things that we try to produce. And with that sort of like things that we launch out all the time is, before that actually happens, there was like hundreds of iterations that constantly goes with me and David and the advisors to try to do on a Google sheet and try to, okay, if we move these numbers, it's a ripple effect. If I move a percentage there, something else, everything just changes, right? So we try to get the best answer, and that's why we are working with Animoca, etc., to work on the tokenomics and everything. But for them to also understand our whole entire ecosystem of our NFTs, the rights, the artifacts, the games, so that it is a very, very complex process if you want to do it properly. So I mean, like, it was a very crash course for me, because like, it's one thing to invest in tokens, and to launch a token is something very, very new, right? It's like, okay, I see tokenomics when people release it. We can understand it, but when it comes to building it, there's so many different thought process behind it, and that's the reason why it took so long, and it took like close to a year for us to reach to this single point. And like on top of that, like even launching a token is a little bit different from launching an NFT project, because for NFT projects, you can launch it anytime. For example, I just say, okay, this is the date I'm launching it. We could go to OpenSea or Blur, etc. But for us, the Bubbles token itself, I strongly believe that we only have one shot. We gotta do it right, and we gotta launch with the biggest blast in the space. So we're trying to align all the central exchanges to make sure that we get the biggest explosion in growth. But when it comes to central exchanges, they have their own timeline, and everybody, all in all, we're trying to align all the ducks in one row, and then we just do it together. But on top of that, we have like communities and we have our games. Everybody's like, oh, ask when TG and everything. But sometimes it's a little bit more complex. I would love to launch it right now, but we honestly can, right? We can do with some central exchanges, but we may not get the right effect that we want it to be because we only got one shot. Or we could even launch it on DEXs. That is one way to do it. But then again, why are we even doing that? Why are we rushing to make sure when we may have a big shot to create the biggest impact when our launches happen? So yeah, I think all in all itself, there's so many moving factors, and some things are a little bit out of our control sometimes. But we can do our best to try to align everything within our control at the best time possible. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I think that's a good, great overview. I totally agree with you. Like, especially with the fervor and stuff that you built up, you got one shot and you want to do it right. I think for everybody that sees every day some other shit coin or meme token launching, and there's literally some random Joe Schmo saying, send me your money to this contract address, and people are sending it by the millions, which is crazy to me. Can you just school people on what an effective token economy looks like in your mind, and like kind of what you envision why Bubble would be a healthy token economy and a healthy token launch?
So when it comes to people putting out a token address and asking people to send stuff, I think it's crazy. I'm not sure how it actually works, but it's just like, why would anybody do that? But at least for us, Bubble itself, I think to put into context, we are not a meme coin. We take things very seriously, right? We want to build something much bigger beyond that. Even like just Bubble itself is going to be a utility token for our ecosystem. But I want a lot more. I want a lot more for the Bubble. Can we potentially grow it into like an infra, for example, a chain itself in the future? But if we can't do it right in this step, we can never do it right the next step. Because versus compared to a meme coin, it's just like, okay, I'm going to launch this. Whatever happens. There's no aftermath of the story. But for Bubble itself, like we want a strong aftermath of stories, right? We want to do things after things after things with this. So that's why we plan it really, really well in terms of the tokenomics. And even like we have this whole entire full structure of things. Like we see how the whole entire tokenomics can flow to a whole entire ecosystem, and not just like, okay, it's just a speculation of buy and sell, but even for our social farming, how can it be linked to reputational score, and how can we potentially reward our holders with our utility token, and can that be actually spent by somewhere and then coming back to the space, or working with brands itself like Samsung, Hugo, whatsoever. If the token is being spent maybe purchasing Hugo stuff or Samsung stuff in the future, can it be potentially be brought back in as a buyback, and even for our games through the ads, through the stores that we launched recently and everything. So everything has to be multiple flywheels to make sure a tokenomics work, and not just of course retail buying power determines the price, right? But with the fundamentals done right, the tokens itself has a strong flywheel effect that can sustain the price, versus like if we have like a few 100 million market cap, what is sustaining it? Because if there's nothing that's sustaining it, it's just pure hype. Once the hype dies down, it's just we're just going to life.
And I think that answers what my follow-up question would be is, it seems like your strategy is making sure that this token has multiple uses throughout your whole ecosystem, because there's very simple tricks, right? Was like locking some of the tokens so most people don't sell it right away and it just devalues, right? And so what I'm saying is, we're not going to be we shouldn't expect the same tricks that you see from these tokens that we have in the past. You really have a thorough thought out plan to incorporate this token in your ecosystem, because obviously we can't get the elephant out of the room. People want to make money off this token.
Exactly.
Sure.
That is just part of the reason why people are pasting Bubble all over the internet. But your goal is for people to make money, but also still people be able to utilize the token in your ecosystem, right?
So like locking your tokens is like, staking mechanisms such as DeFi. I feel that there's perks to it because it minus the supply of the amount of token. There is actually, yeah. But of course, there's multiple ways of doing, like, giving APYs, getting some NFTs or whatever, right? So there's multiple ways to gamify it, but people still have to understand what is the purpose of the token. Else, why am I even staking the tokens, right? It's just to get more money. But like some of the tokens is they are constantly emitting new tokens. So the price it becomes like, the supply keeps getting more and more. So actually, when you actually stake, they're actually creating more supply somewhere to give you that token. So the price actually goes down, right? So that's not something that we're gonna do. I mean, the supply is locked, and like, the elephant in the room is like everybody wants to make money, and that's like at the top of our everybody's head in crypto. Else, why are we even here? Right.
Yeah.
So I think to say that, we are all here to build a brand. There is a huge strong believer of IO, but of course there's also another side of the camp that I want to make money through bubbles. There's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's how we build a strong, infra or ecosystem that can sort of like create burning mechanisms across time so that the prices sustain. I feel like the price will fly to the moon when there's enough retail power. The project itself does not have that ability to push the price to the moon, right? But with perception, and like with the perception of how a brand is, or the narrative of a brand, of what it stands for, people have that belief and they are willing to buy the tokens, and that's why the price appreciates. But for most of the projects, it's like this, right? For us builders and founders, what our job is here is to make sure that we are strong with our brand in terms of mass adoption and bringing the biggest brands, building the best products, bringing the most amount of eyeballs to the products, and maybe more people invest in the product, and then the price appreciates. And on the baseline, the ecosystem that we have is sound and makes sense to make sure that it doesn't become a pump and dump. I feel like that's where our main sort of like mindset. Yeah. Well, I'm not here to say, oh, we're gonna fly to the moon, man. It's just
of course. But if you look at the amount of impressions on Twitter, it'll tell you otherwise. But go ahead, Matty.
But I think a really important point here is because sometimes, if you're on Twitter all the time, you can get mired down by a lot of details. And just from like a bird's eye view, I think it really can be simplified this way. A few years ago, there were thousands of projects that were hyped in the NFT space. Of those, how many are still even around? And how few then were thinking forward enough to say, we need to be thinking about what we're going to be doing 4, 5, 6 steps ahead. And I think a major reason that people have cultivated trust around what you're doing is you did that then when very few people were. So it's very safe to predict you're doing it now. And I think that that's a big gap. That's just very simple overview that explains a lot of what's going on here and gives so many people confidence in this, because you did it before when few were. And so why wouldn't you do it now? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So trust is, you're definitely right, Matty. The trust is actually built across time and not just like, where we launch something and then everybody just trusts you. So it's been 2 years and like, we've proved to the space again and again and again that our products work. Our products is something that people want. Our brand is something that people like. So, and even just a recent product, like I think social farming itself is also a product itself. It shows massive success of how we know what we are doing. So, I feel like, everything that we do here is very well thought. And most of the time I think at the end of the day, we underpromise. I think that's the key, right? We say, okay, this is a product that we're going to launch. If you like it, buy it. If you don't like it, decide for yourself, right? So, and through that whole entire 2 years, we saw like, okay, well, these people know the space well, they navigate it well, they build things that, has potential. So, that I think creates that trust where bubbles is going to be something that's very huge for the space.
No, I love it, man. And Matty, fantastic point, and I love everything that you said. I want to ask this, for the people, I want to be clear on what tokens actually do for imaginary ones, right? Throw out everybody that's making a token just to moon, dump, sell, and make $1 bajillion overnight. For someone that's doing it right like you, and this is my interpretation, tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm missing something, but the main reasons you would launch a token, one, to create an economy for your IP, right? And then two, to raise capital for your company to continue to build your dreams and your goals 10 years from now. Am I missing anything there as to why you would create a token? Are those the two main reasons, or am I wrong there?
Yeah, absolutely. You're actually right. So the economy side of things is how, like I mentioned, how can we create a liquid product that can constantly reward our community? Because like if you look at NFTs wise, either you launch a new NFT or you just keep giving one NFT, for example. Like, you know, if you tweet on this, you like on this, I give you one imaginary ones. But that's just going to benefit one person in the economy. But if you have a liquid sort of like product, which is Bubble itself, how can we can potentially scale this entire Bubble world to a much bigger world? So if you look at, you know, if you start creating content, I can give you a certain amount of bubbles, and that can be scalable in so many forms. Or if you play the game, how can I reward you by playing the game? And while playing the game, can you create content about the game, etc.? So that if you look at that perspective, that's why the Bubbles token is going to be the core of every product that we build, because it's going to be the economy that drives every single thing that we're trying to achieve. To the second point itself, the fundraising, yes, of course, like, you know, we want to have a bigger dream and everything. So of course, we still have a huge treasury before our fundraising, and that itself, like, even if we don't do this token raise, actually we're still fine, to be honest. But of course, with this token raise, we can scale much more exponentially, much faster, to capitalize the market much better. So I think that is what we are actually working on. And with the Bubbles itself, lastly, is we want to expand the brand beyond just an NFT project.
Right.
We want to scale as a Web3 crypto project that, you know, everybody's talking about.
And I love that, man, because you said one, it's interesting to me because that's how I thought a token and how people should use that, right? And that's how you're effectively using it. What the scene knows is that it's just a way to make quick buck overnight, and that's it. But you're thinking about that as a way to, because you make this point, and people do not talk about this enough. NFT projects, the only thing you can really do unless you do what you're doing or create an IP or create another way to gain revenue, is just to make another NFT. Yes. And at the end of the day, the early adopters are the only ones that went out in that equation, right? And that can't sustain forever. So that is really cool. And we see this more and more as people are coming on. They're building businesses around Web3, and NFTs are a piece of the business. It's not the business like it was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
So it's really cool to see that. Let's do this. I want to be cognizant of your time because you're insanely busy. We got a few minutes left. I wanted to keep to an hour as promised. You kind of almost did it there at the end, but any additional comments? And again, like you said, totally under promise on anything, but like, what is the future? Any kind of closing comments of like what people can expect from Imaginary One and Bubble in general? And if you think you've already done yourself justice, we can leave it at that. But any other final comments there? And then after that, we have our one final question, and then we'll do our closing comments and we'll call it a night.
Sounds good, man. So I think just to add on is, like, you know, Imaginary One's evolved from an NFT project to maybe like it's an entertainment company right now that focuses on the, you know, the merchandise, gaming, and the film side of things. So as you can see across the time, we have launched our 2 games, and then of course our merchandise just hit the in real life stores all across Singapore. Our content side has been always going on with Imaginary Junior, and of course we onboarded, like, you know, a few advisors from Netflix, HBO Max, Disney, etc. We're going to start creating content, right? How can we decentralize content with that way? Can it be a co-funding way of doing short animation with Imaginary Ones? I think that could be one way of looking at it. Building games, you can do it together too, like, you know, through the Bubbles token. It could be And like, because the thing about Bubbles token, it could be a utility token or governance token. There's so many ways to do it, but
Right.
and that itself creates the biggest purpose of why what Imagine One stands for. We want to be, I mean, it sounds like a huge dream, but we want to be the Disney of the space. And it's gonna take a long time for us to build, but we are taking a step at a time to make the best decision along the way to bring our community to build something that's really, really special for us. So I've talked about, like, the sort of like bottom up strategy. So, like, we started off as an NFT project with community, and then slowly incentivizing them on the second layer, and then slowly building up to the top as a Web3 company, right?
Right.
Versus what's very different with that approach, with a Web2 approach, is very inverted. Like, the top strategies and the top executives will make the top decisions. Okay, I'm gonna make a Marvel movie. Maybe nobody wants to watch that, for example, but I'm still gonna do it because it's like politically right to do it, right? And then it funnels down to the users. So, like, the fans or the communities that has not much of a say when it comes to the things that's being shipped out. But for us, we are trying to do something very, very new for the whole entire world, I would say. And that's what decentralization means to me. And that's what the Bubbles token will actually power up this whole entire community, all the way building up towards the entertainment company in the long run.
Dude, beautifully said. And I don't think you could have. You've done this a couple times.
Yeah.
You've been talking about this maybe a little bit. No, but you did a fantastic job. So, like I said, our last question, we asked this to you last time, but we always like feedback and input for ourselves, right? Again, you've done a bajillion spaces at this point. You've been on a bajillion of everything. Time on Midlife Crisis podcast compared to the rest. How do you feel tonight went?
I think it's awesome, man. I feel like, when I go to the podcast with you guys, it's very natural. Like, we are just having a conversation, man. I don't feel like we are on a podcast, so that's great, I guess.
Yeah.
Keep doing what you guys are doing, man. I really, really appreciate, like, real people doing, like, trying to make the space better as a whole, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate what you guys have been doing across the whole entire period of time. It's not easy, man. It's not easy.
Yeah, it is not easy, man. I mean, we actually literally have imaginary ones people in here saying, like, this is insanely insightful. I haven't heard this stuff before, so thank you, man. It means the world to us. That's what we're trying to do, and as you know, it's a freaking grind out here to try to get the good people to win the crazy battle, which is a bunch of shitty people trying to skewer people over the head with money. But hey, man, we're gonna fight the good fight. But thank you so much for the kind word. Coming from you is huge. Maddie, go ahead and say your closing comments. I'll say mine, and then we'll end it. And like I said, Clement, if you just stick around for a minute or two, we can chat after I end the stream.
Yeah. So fantastic conversation. I knew we only had an hour, and we can chat like we did last time for 3 hours very easily. But you said some really insightful things. I really loved how you talked about having a North Star, and if your North Star is being a Disney of the space, then it's really kind of cool to think about that. Like, it all started with an animated mouse, and for you guys, that NFT launch could be essentially your Steamboat Willie of, like, how this all develops. And I just think it's cool to be a part of it. And I love having you on the show and being able to just go on this ride with you, man. It's been wild. It's been a pleasure. Can't wait to do it again.
Yeah. I'd love to do it soon, man. You guys, let's plan for something, man.
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
And I'll add on, man, we have, I think I keep on saying close to 200. We're probably over 200 founders at this point. We've seen a lot of people, right? And we've talked at the titans of the space, right? We had Digimental, we had Dex from Phantom Network at the height of the hype, Clementine Nightmare when they were super hyped up. They've all become friends, and I really do look at you as like someone that I can rely on and talk to in this space and consider a friend in the space for sure. I want to continue to grow together, man. I want to hug you in real life. I know that's going to happen at one point. And I'm just honored that because I don't remember this story, but like I DM'd Gentle Whale or David, like probably a month or two before you minted, and it was crazy, right? And he never got back to me, and that was just one of my 1,000 no's that I just considered it a no, right? And randomly, I don't even know why, David reached out to me like 3 months after you guys minted, and we were able to get you on the show. And that just like those little miraculous things that happen, it's crazy how it all works out. And you came on the show, our personalities align, our missions align, and I just want to know that we are here to help you in any way possible, because you are, and I'm stake in the sand, I'm putting it here. You guys are the top founders in Web3 that have been on our show that are actually putting it together the right way, in a meaningful way, and are doing it with intention. And that is very hard to come by. And like I said, we've had a lot of like big wigs on our show. You in my mind are the top dogs. There's no reason why I do not change my Twitter handle to a bubble tag ever, right? I would never do that, but you are one of them that I consider to do that. And I've been doing daily posts about it because I truly believe in what you guys are building. And I know it's just not some bullshit cash grab token drop. So thank you for doing what you're doing, because the space needs 1,000 more people like you. So thank you, man.
Thanks, man. That's really, really like very, very well said, man. Very beautiful, man. I think at the end of the day, like, we appreciate like everybody that's trying to make the space better. Like you guys and some of the founders in the space. It's not an easy task. I remember talking to one of the founders back then. Like, he's telling me like, we're trying to do right for the space, and it's so tough, right? Because everybody's hyping everything. So we come to a consensus like, doing the right thing is more important than trying to chase for the next shiny things, right? It's never too late to do the right thing. So and that has always been our belief since day one. Even like, so many things that has happened, like us being fathered since day one. Imagine once was fathered all the way till today. We've come a long way on hindsight, right? Wow, it's in 2 years. And I think it's a process that I think Imagine once or any founders has to go through, right? And it's not like what like how the incidents of like defines you, but it's more like how you respond to the incidents that defines you, right? So
100%. And to cap that off, I think we'll leave it at this. What you're seeing for midlife crisis and imaginary one is what we preach all the time. And I think the #1 key to success: hard work over a long period of time, consistency, discipline. You've been doing it. We've been doing it for years, and we won't stop. And that cream will rise to the top, man. I'm firmly believe of that.
Consistency. If you're consistent about something, then eventually you make it.
Yeah.
So
you got it.
And with that being said, the Midlife Crisis show is out. The myth, the legend, incredible conversation. We kept in our time. We love you all. Mikey G has got his own space backed by the Plague and Ponds themselves every Friday, 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We'll be bringing on awesome people like Clement himself, doing the same thing of going to deep dive with the founders. And Maddie's back, baby. We'll be doing weekly podcasts for here on out. Can't wait to see you all. Midlife Crisis is out.